Hey Techno Studs, in this video we get to start digging into the switches and configuring the switches. So we're going to configure our first switch in this video. One of the first things that I like to do in configuring my switches and other devices is have all of my commands set up ahead of time. This is so that way I know exactly what I'm going to be programming that switch for, and also gives me a record of what I'm changing on the switch. I find if I don't approach things with an organized game plan is that things will get missed. And I've seen this in a lot of network engineers as they are configuring and setting up equipment. If they don't have a game plan ahead of time, then it creates a lot of problems. And so what I actually do is I start out with a template, and I can grab this out of my configs file, and I can open up this switch configuration template. So this is a template of all of the commands, and you see exclamation points where I need to enter in certain information into this. That it's information that's specific to whatever device that I'm configuring. So this is my template, and it helps me make sure that I have consistency in what I'm deploying out to my different devices. And so here I am going to take this now and start filling this in. For instance, host name, I would take this and I'd then put in, we're configuring HQ. Oh, don't put the exclamation mark, otherwise it won't take that. So HQS1 is the name of this host name, and then I would set the clock for whatever the clock is set to. So I go in here and start filling this in. Now, I've already got a lot of this information filled in, so I'm going to close out of this. I'm not going to save it this time. And then it's this HQS1 that I have configuration and set up for this particular device. So this is going to be the configuration file that I'm going to use to set up HQS1. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you line by line or a few lines at once. We're going to copy and paste them now into our console so we can start configuring this switch. All right, I moved that into the corner because we're going to use that as a reference as we configure this device. The other thing that I've done is I've opened up this key pass. So one thing that's important is to create secure passwords. I have another video where I talk about how to create secure passwords, but I think it would be unfair if I use something really simple in this device. When I'm configuring these devices, I'm giving the wrong impression. So I'm going to use a password manager during the configuration of this, so that way you have an accurate view of what you're going to actually be experiencing when you get out there. You need to have good password management when you're configuring, when you're dealing with all of these devices. Especially if anything were to be compromised, then that could bring down your network and have a big impact on a lot of people. All right, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a console to connect into the switch. And so what I'll do is bring up this console. I'm going to connect via the serial port. I know that I need to use COM3 on this, so I'm going to connect via COM3. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the bell because that can get a little bit annoying here. And then the other thing is we will take a look at the appearance, and we're going to change the appearance to be a little bit bigger so that way you can see this as I'm typing out. So I'm going to click OK with this, and then we will open this up. And now we've got our console, and I will hit enter here. We've got our switch that's up right here, and I just want to take a second to size this window so that way we can see all three of these windows on the screen at once. All right, to do any of my configuration, I'm going to need to get into the enable mode or the privileged exec mode. So I'm going to type enable, and then we need to first of all update the Cisco iOS. So that's the first step, is to go through the process of updating the Cisco iOS. Now I'm not going to run through all that. It's fairly lengthy, and I've already done it on this switch. So just know that that step has already been taken care of, but I have a video that goes fully and explains that fully. one thing that I am going to do though is there is some configurations on this switch already. So the first thing that I'm going to do is delete the vlan.flash the vlan.dat file. So I'm going to delete that, verify it, confirm, and error deleting it, no such file or directory, because I've not created really any VLANs at this point in time. So that file doesn't exist, not surprisingly, but the next thing that I'm going to do is erase the startup-config. So I'm going to erase startup-config, it verifies it, and it says, okay, it's been completed. The next thing I have to do that is reload. So I'm going to type in reload on this and hit enter. And do I want to save it? No. The whole point of this is to get a fresh switch with no configurations on it to make sure we don't have anything that follows us into this, this brand new setup. So proceed, and I'm going to click OK, and then we'll wait until this comes back up. All right, everything is up now, and what I'll do is I'll hit enter here, and pops up with, do you want to do the initial configuration dialog? No, we don't want to do that. Now I'm on the switch, I can hit enable, get into enable mode. And the next thing that I want to do with this is I want to be able to turn on IP version 6 with this. So I'm going to get into global config mode here. I am going to type in, or in this case, I've got all of the commands here. So I'll get that configured, and just to make sure everything is good, I'll do a copy run start on this. So, I need to exit out though, and then do a copy run start, and save that to the configuration file, startup config file. It's saved now, and then I am going to do another reload on this. So then I'll have, it has a startup config file at this point in time. It has the IP version 6 now set up on it, and it just has pretty much a blank startup config file though. There's not a lot of settings that are on this. So we'll do a reload, and then we're ready to start configuring this device to be on our network. All right, our NAT switch is now back up and running. We're ready for our next steps. So the next step I'm going to do is get into the global configuration mode. So I'll do that. And now we need to program it for the host name. So I'll change the host name. So we'll program it for that. And you can see now the prompt has changed to include our host name of HQ-S1. This is great because whenever you're on the device, then you know exactly what device you're on. Next up, what we need to do is we need to set the clock on this. But if I hit clock set and hit the question mark, notice it's an unrecognizable command. That's because I need to be in the regular privilege exec mode. I can't be in the global configuration mode. And so I actually got this out of order. I probably should have set the clock before the host name. So I'm going to move this around on my document here and move it around on my template as well so that I make sure that it's in the right order. Okay, next what I need to do is I need to get back into global configuration mode to set the message of the day. So I'm going to get into the global configuration mode here. I'm going to set message of the day. I don't want that space in there though, so I'm going to hit copy this, paste it in here, and it says what the C is it recognizes that's where you're going to start the communication, and then it's going to you're going to paste in whatever you want to include enters. You can hit enter and you paste in the information that you want into here to display as a message of the day, and then you're going to hit the C to end it. So I've actually got this all set up. I can't paste it all in one shot, so I'm going to do it in a couple shots here, but I'm going to copy this first part and then paste it into here, and then I'll copy that second part and paste that second part into there. And then this will be a little, every time I get onto this machine, it will be my little techno surge that pops up here at the beginning during my login. So I'll let this continue to load into here, and then I will copy the rest of it into here. Once again, once I'm done, I'll hit the C to end it. And now that is taking that as the message of the day. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this no logging console. And one reason why I like to do this is because when I'm demoing stuff, it's really handy if you shut down a interface, it'll pop up with that it's shut down. Or if I add something, it will give me some instant feedback of what's happening on my device. The problem is sometimes that can be distracting when I'm doing a demo. So I'm going to just copy this and paste it in here so that way I remove the chance that these messages are going to pop up during the middle of my demos. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to secure all of the passwords. So this is going to encrypt all passwords on this device. So I'm going to make sure everything is secure. So I'll type that in there. And then I'm going to create an enable secret. All right, and the enable secret I have actually got within my KeyPass. So this is an example of where I'm going to I want to make sure I'm secure, so I've got my KeyPass to manage all my passwords. Each of these passwords are unique and different, and they're something that's not guessable. And so I'm just going to right-click on this and say copy password, and then paste it into here and hit enter. And now it's accepted that. Notice that I don't have it within my text document here. I didn't paste it in here. And the reason is because if I were to save that and then get a hold of, somebody would get a hold of that, then they would know the passwords to my device. And this document is stored in clear text. So I wanted to do it somewhere where it's not stored in clear text. So now I have my enable password. I'm going to close out this window here. Next, what I want to do is configure the line console 0. So I'm going to get into line console 0 here. I'll paste that into here. Line. Let's do console 0. Make sure I change that in here as well. And then I need a password for that. So I'm going to hit enter here. I'm going to make a password. And then once again, I also have that in my KeyPass. So I'll copy the password. I'll paste it, hit enter. Now that's configured in there. I'm going to type in the login command and then exit out of here. The next, I'm going to configure the VTY lines so I can remote into this machine. And when I remote into this machine, I want to use SSH to do that. So this first part is actually setting up SSH, and then I get into the VTY lines to configure the VTY lines. So let's set a domain name. So I'm going to set the domain name, and I always like to use the andy.lan. So similar to Candyland, and it's a local area network, and my name is Andy, so it all just kind of makes sense to me. So IP domain AndyLan. I want to make sure that it uses SSH2, so I'm going to say IPSSH2, so it uses IPSSH2. We're going to generate a new key, so I'm going to paste a new key into here. To generate this, it's going to ask me how many bits do I want this. And it does need to be above, I think it's 768 in order for it to use SSH2. I'm going to just do 1024. And so I'll hit enter and it'll generate a key using 1024. So that's how many bits it'll use to generate this key. All right, once that's configured, I'm going to configure those VTY lines, so I'll paste that into here. And I want to make sure that these VTY lines use SSH. So I'm going to say transport input SSH in here, and then that makes sure that that it's only using SSH and I cannot connect via telnet into this. And then I'll type in my login to activate all of that. And password is set on there. Or it says login is disabled until the password is set. So we're going to have to set our password. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a username. And then I'll just call this Andrew with privilege 15. The privilege 15 that I've added in here just allows me, so I don't have to get, if without it, it would get me into the user exec mode, and then I'd have to get into the privilege exec mode. Well, there's not really anything I want to do in the user exec mode when I'm configuring this. So I just want to jump straight into the privilege exec mode. So I'm going to use this privilege 15 to jump straight into the privilege exec mode, and then I'm going to have to enter my password in there. So I'm going to copy this part. I'll paste this into here, and then, incomplete command because I didn't include my password, and I have created a password for this as well. So I'm going to copy password and I'll paste it into here, hit enter, and now I've got that complex password to get into there. So, all right, now I've got a way to get in there. I need to still configure this so that it has an IP address. It doesn't have an IP address. So I need to create a IP address. I'm going to do that into interface VLAN 1. So I'll get into that interface. I've got the IP address all set up here. Here's the IP address, and we've got the IP version 6 address here. So I can actually just copy all three of these at once. I'm just going to paste them all into there. Now, if this machine is going to be remotely administered at all, then it needs a default gateway. It needs to know how to get out to other remote networks. And so I can configure it by doing this IP default-gateway. So I'm going to do that. And now it knows how to get out to remote networks, at least from an IP version 4 perspective. IP version 6, it'll use Slack, but for this, it'll use for IP version 4, it'll have to have this address. Okay, next up, what I want to do is I want to start configuring the interfaces. So I've got the interface range, and for this particular one, since this is a 3750, I got FA 101 through 42. So I'm configuring this range right here. I'm configuring from port 1 through port 42 on this switch. And I'm giving it a description reserved for later. And then I'm also shutting this down. From a security perspective, it's better to just have it shut down. So what I'm going to do is I'll just copy this whole thing. And I start out actually below this exit and scroll all the way up. And that way it gets the carriage return, which means that at the end of the exit, it'll hit enter. So I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to paste this into here to configure all of this and see how it sits exit, and then it has that carriage return to go down to the next line. And that's because I started right here on this line and then selected up. All right. All right, next I'm going to configure each of these interfaces. So FA1043 is going to connect to HQ-S2, and then the next one is going to be reserved for later. It's going to be connected to HQ-S2 later on, but for now we're just going to say reserved for later. So I've got actually this whole batch right here of interfaces, and I can select this whole range right here, and I'm going to copy it, Control-C. Notice I got that carriage return down there at the bottom. So now I should be able to just paste those all in, and it all goes right into this switch right here. Next thing I want to do is I want to save this configuration. So I'm going to do a copy run start and hit enter. Oh, I do need to be in here. So copy run start, hit enter. Save it. Yes, I do. And now everything is saved and should be up and running. Now, I just thought of this. I actually want to be able to test this out. And I'm going to create an interface or set up an interface for testing purposes. So what I'm going to do, I'll just copy one of these ones in here and add to the end here. And I'm going to change the 48 to 34, because that's what we have the demo laptop plugged into these other switches. So I'm going to do port 34, description. Well, I'll just say it's for, we'll call it the testing port. And then I'll have to, right now, port 34 is shut down, so I'm going to have to do no shutdown to bring it live. And then I can copy this. I'll have to be in the global configuration mode. And then I can paste it in here, and it gets into that interface and configures it. And now that port is configured. So I should have actually connectivity to that at this point in time. So let's test this out and see if we have connectivity to it. So to see if I have connectivity to it, first of all, what I'm going to do is just bring up a command prompt. So I'll click on the start menu here, type in CMD, hit enter, and then I'm going to ping the address. So ping 10.1.0, and this switch we set up for .11. So I can hit enter, and we are getting connectivity back. And so there, we do have connectivity to this. So that's great. The next thing that I can do is see if I can connect to it via SSH. So what I'll do is I'm going to open up another PuTTY session. So I'll say new session. I just clicked this icon right here and clicked on new session. And then I'm going to type in the IP address of this, 10.1.0.11. This is connecting via SSH. I'm going to change the bell to none here. I would change the appearance, but for this first login, I'm just going to have it with the smaller font for now. So, and I will actually put on here, I'm going to type in my user name, and that bypasses that step from it asking me for my username. So it's just a kind of a cheat way to jump into it a little bit quicker. So then I'll save the configuration here. I'm going to save this as HQ-S1, and I'll save that. And now I can open this up. First thing it's going to do is connect. It's going to give me a warning that says, hey, this is this is an unknown certificate here. Are you sure you want to connect to this? Do you trust this? Now, we don't want to really train our users to just click on yes on these. Make sure you know what you're connecting into. But in this case right here, it's because it's a self-signed certificate. In this case right here, you're going to see this occasionally with equipment that you're working on as admins. Yes, we are fine with the security of this. We know this piece of equipment. Excuse me, this is the actual certificate, accepting this certificate. So we are going to accept this. We can connect to it once, or we can just say accept. We're going to accept this so that way it doesn't keep asking for this in the future. So we'll hit accept. Notice it says it's using the username Andrew. That's because I had that into my PuTTY configuration there at the beginning of it. I'm going to copy my password here. So copy password. I'm going to paste it into here. Hit enter. And then, let's try that one more time. Oh, and for some reason, it is not liking that password. So let me try that one more time. I did a little bit of troubleshooting. I figured it out. It is because I missed this local on the tag end of the login. So I now added that back to my template so I don't make this mistake again in the future. So I've got this local right here. And what that local does is it pretty much tells the machine, look at your username, the database on the local machine for the credentials to log into this device. So this is the credentials to log into the device. Now it's going to look at that. And I can have multiple users set up in here as well. So now I figured that out. Once again, I added it to the template. Now we're ready to test this out. Again, I'm going to say a new session. I'm going to click on this HQ-S1. I'm going to click load to load that. All those settings now are loaded into here. I am going to click on open. Gives me that warning, but It does not open up that certificate. That certificate has been accepted. I said accept, and now it's going to accept it from here on out. So now we can test out this connection. It's making this connection. Let's type in our password. So our password is here in this file right here. I'll copy that password, and then I'll open this up, paste it into there, hit enter, and now we're logged into the machine. Also notice that I'm logged directly into the privilege exec mode. It's bypassed that user exec mode. We now have HQ-S1 all set up. It's configured. We can connect to it. We can ping it. So it's all set up, and we're ready to start configuring the rest of our devices.